Hi, Tony here, and welcome to episode 1 of the Royal Enfield Interceptor 650 project. Now I have the bike here exactly as it landed. It's completely bone stock. So the first episode is going to be pretty simple really. It's just going to be unbolting a few bits and bobs, but that does give us an opportunity to look more closely at the bike and start looking at ideas of other things that can be changed and other modifications that can be made. So I'll give you a quick look around it as it is stock. I'll wheel it into the garage and we can start stripping off some of this extra weight. So there's an obvious first choice is to get that Fender Extender off. I took the mirrors off to get it in the van to bring it home, and immediately you take those off, that looks better. I have got a set of bar end mirrors coming which are quite special, and that will be the first change for me whilst I'm riding it around before we delve into it much more deeply. There's the little guards there on the cylinder heads, they can come off. That centre stand can come off. That rail must add quite a bit of weight, but there we are. Let's drag it inside and start getting busy with the spanners. I've got the bike up on the ramp and it's time to start pulling off some of those bits that we don't want, and I'm going to start with those plastic fender extenders. The extenders are pretty crudely put on with a crosshead screw, or 3 crosshead screws, so you will be left with a hole in the fender. I'm going to change the fender at some point, I would imagine, and as I suspected, there is just a nut bolt and a couple of washers on there. It is going to leave a hole, which is a bit of a shame, but I'm probably going to replace this anyway. Well, I am going to replace this anyway, so for the time being, just getting this off is going to make things look a little bit neater, so I'll get the other 2 off. So despite the holes, that's already looking better. I'll put this and the bolts in my weighing in box, so as we go through the build I can just keep a track of how much weight we're shedding off the bike. So let's now move and do the one at the back. Now of course it's all very well to look at these bikes, and as I did say, well, these look really easy to work on, but the proof is going to be in the pudding as we strip it down to see actually how easy they are to work with, how easy they are to get to. 2 outer bolts here, and underneath here, I'll try and show it in another camera angle, but underneath here there's 2 bolts that bolt up onto the inside of here. I suspect that you can just unbolt those and re-bolt them to take this off. Let's undo these 2 little 8mm bolts and we'll see what happens. So yeah, that's the first problem encountered. The cable that runs through to light actually runs through a hole in this fender, so you can't just slide it out once you've undone the bolts. You could take the rear light apart and do that, but this is only a little cheap piece of plastic, and even if you put that back on, it's not going to be, this isn't structural, so I'm just going to cut the plastic here and then I can yank that out of the way. So yeah, if I was going to keep this, I probably wouldn't cut it, but as I say, it's not structural, you can put that back on and you wouldn't really notice that. But that's another piece to go in the weighing in box. So obviously I've got the plate to put back on, but already that's looking better. I'm also not intending to keep this grab rail, so there's 2 bolts here, 2 on the other side. Get those off and we can lose this. And there is a grab rail for the center stand to be able to pull it up onto its center stand. I'm going to lose the center stand as well because that's just added bulk and weight and ugliness. I know it's practical, but this isn't necessarily going to be a practical bike. So I've done the other 2 bolts on the other side, and this, once this done, then should mean that this just lifts out of the way. There you go, another chunk of weight gone and a little bit of neatness. Got these bosses on here which I don't particularly like. It may well be that we'll end up grinding those off, or potentially if I go for a shorter loop tail and cut this piece off, we'll lose that anyway, but it's still better than having that on there because I'm not a big fan of that. On this side is where this pull handle was bolted to the grab rail. So it is a 13mm socket on the 13mm bolt for the top shock. I am going to put a washer on there just so that we've got a little bit more coverage, and at some point I'm probably going to change the shocks, but if I don't, I'll put some kind of dress up mount on here. I might even end up mounting indicators off this bit here, I'm not entirely sure, but for the time being I'm just going to put this back in place. As it turns out, the bolt is just a little bit too long. There you go, second washer does the job for now anyway. As I say, I'm going to change this, but that gets me in there nice and snug. That's good. And whilst I'm here, I might as well take the pillion footpeg off as well, because I'm not going to be taking pillions on it, and that's just a single bolt on the back here to get this unit off. That's a bit more weight saved and a bit more junk off the bike. The next thing to go will be these guards on the cylinder heads. I'm sure they do serve a purpose, but not for me. They're just an additional bit of ugliness. No weight to them, but get those off, that helps. The biggest thing probably next in terms of weight savings, which is not the most important thing, but to get some weight off the bike, but also get something that's not going to look that great going forward as I start to mod it further, is to get the centre stand off. So I've got the bike on its side stand now because it's time to get the centre stand off. I know it's practical, and actually when I'm working out on here, it is very easy to put it on there and make sure I've got the bike nice and level and straight and stable. But I have noticed that there are bosses for paddock stand bobbins on the back here, so I'm going to order myself a set of those. I've got a paddock stand, so I can use that when it's mounted on here, which means getting this off. And this is pretty simple. It's just a case of unhooking this spring, and then on the other side there's a split pin which runs through to hold the centre stand in place, and then all that is a case of getting that split pin off, pushing the pin out, dropping that out. So pretty straightforward really. Now obviously, because the stand is up, this isn't under too much pressure, but it's still something to keep an eye on when you unhook it. So it is a little bit difficult to see here, but there's actually two springs that go around this pin. If you try to do two at a time, it's not that easy, so you can use the leverage from one to unhook the first pin. The other option is of course to knock the split pin out and push this pin through from the other side, thus releasing the centre stand, and you can then unhook it that way. Well, apologies, I was busy beavering away here and hadn't realised that my camera had stopped recording, and I've reached a point where I can't really put it back together. But what I did essentially was knock the split pin and the washer out from this piece here that runs through the middle, unhook the spring so that I can push this pin through and remove this, only to find the first hurdle is that it fouls on the exhaust before it clears to get out. So there is no way. I've been trying to see if I can wiggle it into a better position, and there doesn't seem to be a way of doing it. I'm going to continue to fight with this, but it might be that I'm just going to have to loosen this bolt here and this bolt here to be able to swing the exhaust out just a few millimeters, just to be able to pull that out. That's a little bit annoying, but it's one of those things, unfortunately. So yeah, unbolting the exhaust here and just wiggling that up out of the way, enabling me to finally pull that out. So obviously that's enabled me to yank this out of the way. That's quite hefty with all the bolts and everything else, so I'll put that on the pile to weigh. It obviously looks a little bit neater, not as practical, but this is not meant to be a practical bike. So I will now put the exhaust back on, because I think this is probably enough to take off for the time being. I'll have another quick look and see if there's anything else. Whilst I'm here, I'm going to get these off as well. Normally I'd run a little piece of fishing wire behind there, but I suspect yeah, they're not held on by very much, so they'll just pull off. Take that sticky bit off, get a bit of brake cleaner on there, and we can get that looking nice. Actually, it doesn't even look like I'm going to need the brake cleaner. It's almost like these were designed to come off easily. Now of course this is not a race bike, so weight reduction isn't the ultimate goal, but the Interceptor 650 is a chunky little bugger, so any weight that we can get off of that has got to be good. Thankfully my wife doesn't watch these videos, so she won't notice that I have taken the kitchen scales on one of the mixing bowls to do this. Let's just go through and put these bits and pieces in and see how much weight we've actually saved. And bang, there we can see 4,050 grams, so 4 kilos saved just with those few little bits. But that's just getting started on this. Obviously the silencers are going to weigh a lot, so I suspect that we can shed quite a bit more weight off of this, as well as making it look good. And there you go, just rolling it out now to have a look. And although only very minor changes with a couple of bits coming off, you can already see how it starts to make the bike look a little bit less cluttered and a little bit more streamlined. If you imagine then losing a lot of these, getting these mirrors out of the way, putting some smaller exhausts on, generally tidying up, it shows you that you don't really need to do very much to improve the looks of these bikes. I also think I've got a better idea of where to go with this bike, and I probably want to get it to look something like this. I want to get something smaller on here. I like the bobber style pipes that sit underneath. We'll shorten this potentially. There's some nice bolt-on rear loops that you can use to bring that in a bit shorter, get a slightly shorter seat on it, something a bit flatter. I'd like to move the instruments maybe into the top of the headlight to get rid of this, change the yokes, change the bars, hide as much of the wiring as I can. Then I may look at doing something like an airbox delete if we want to go down that route. I don't necessarily think you have to, but it could be interesting to do that. But I'll certainly look at changing these side covers, and there's a few other bits and pieces, foot pegs, levers, all that sort of stuff. I'm not sure about the colour. This Baker Express paint job is very nice. Maybe I could shoot some metal flake over the top of that so it's the same design but looks a little bit funkier, or we could go for something completely different. That I've yet to decide on, but for the time being we've got a really nice paint job that we can run with and get the rest of it done. So there you go, that's episode 1 of the Interceptor project done. No new parts on there, all I've done in this is just take a few bits off. In episode 2 we'll start to get some bits on the bike and change a few other things. If you want to keep up with this build project, I've put a separate playlist to put all of these videos in, but obviously the easiest way to keep up to date is to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell, then you'll get notified as and when new videos come through. I hope you've enjoyed the video. As I say, admittedly not much going on in this one, we're just kind of starting to shape the project. I'd still be interested to hear your comments, any suggestions. I want to get this as interactive as I can do on this platform, so any of that, drop it in the comment section down below. Keep them sensible, keep them clean, and everybody will be happy. So thanks again for watching, and until next time, take care, ride safe, and I'll see you soon. Bye.